Bills.
Moving on to bills, the biggest bills that we have are those that are pass-through amounts. The $166,000 for Met Council, that's part of that $1.5 million grant that we received from them. And then the Spiral Brewery loan, their first and final draw, and then a couple other bills that we had. The Open to Business is our annual fee to run the Open to Business program that we run in conjunction with other Dakota County communities. And I could stand for any questions on the bills.
Mark.
Thanks. Real quick, John, I see we got one for Stantec. Are we done with Hudson? Is that the last of the last bill that we'll see?
Probably not the last of the last, but getting down there. The Stantec work is related to some well sealing that needed to take place. We had to do well testing for a period of 3 or 4 years. We put in our last report there a few months ago, and so they're wrapping that up.
Okay, thank you.
John, could you talk a little bit about Open to Business in terms of how successful that's been, if there's any statistics that come with that, and
Sure.
looking back on the year?
Yeah, looking back on the year itself, we should be getting an annual report from them shortly that I'll have for the next meeting. But taking a look at visits, generally we have 10 to 20 visits a year that they provide us. Loan program, the gap loans that they have, we've received probably 2 or 3 of those over the past 6, 7 years that we've been involved in the program itself. What Open to Business is it provides an opportunity for those that are looking to open new businesses or people that are looking to expand businesses to speak one-on-one with an entrepreneur that's been through similar questions. It can provide guidance on common questions, sources for potential funding, questions from lenders, those type of items.
Thanks. All right, I think we're open to a motion to approve bills.
I'll move.
So moved. Ron?
Point of information, actually.
Sorry?
Point of information, should I abstain from voting?
From voting
From
on
approving the bills or anything?
the bill? Oh, because of the Spiral
Yeah.
Good point, yes.
Okay.
I would recommend that you abstain. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? One abstaining, and that motion carries. Moving on to business.
Okay, business. The one item of business we have tonight is a preliminary land credit sale and concept plan. I'm just gonna go over to the podium here and pull up a couple pictures of the site. And while waiting for this to warm up, we discussed this project a little bit last week, and this is a potential lot sale within our industrial park for Creek Rentals. They operate a mini storage rental business. And I'll put up a map here in just a moment showing where the property is and what it looks like. Last meeting we were here, we wanted to discuss the concept of selling the property for this type of use and take a look at the concept plan. And based on the discussion from the meeting, there was support for the project, and so we are moving forward with action tonight. The 2 action items that we have for this are to recommend approval of the preliminary land credit, which I'll get into in just a moment, and then also the concept plan for development of the property. So what we're looking at is this property here, 2.5 acres. Spiral Boulevard's located here as it goes west towards Highway 316. This is Cranky Ape. This is the Glendale Heights neighborhood with the townhomes and apartments. And so this is the property we're looking at. In the middle of the property, there is a large dirt spoil pile of about 1,000 cubic yards. We'll talk about that a little bit more in just a moment. And so what we're looking at here is development of the property. Creek Rentals is proposing to construct 3 mini storage buildings and a business storage building. The total volume of those would be about 48,000 square feet. And so we're looking at a potential land credit sale on this. Again, with the industrial park, we've established a $1.54 market price for the property. Under our Land for a Dollar program, we have the opportunity to provide a discount to people, provided that they meet certain job requirements and/or building valuations. And so running through the calculations on this property, we have an estimated market value of about $173,000 for it at $1.54 a square foot. We have an estimated market value for the buildings that would go on of about $1.1 million. So we have a construction credit which does not quite equal the total property value. So of the $173,000 value, we've got $110,000 in credits, meaning that there'd be cash due upon transfer of this property of just under $63,000. When we take a look at the site, there's a couple of good things we're looking at. Number one, we have an increased tax base of over $1 million. Today, the property is not generating any taxes. It's exempt. It's been exempt for, I think, almost its whole existence on the property. We will be providing some wage growth, about a half a job of living wage growth in the property, but we'll provide a tax value entity that will be paying in taxes into the city and providing new development within the park itself. So within the packet, I've put some of the requirements that we'd have for the land credit, the payment of the remaining value of the property of $63,000, remaining in business for at least 5 years, and then needing to go through the site plan approval for construction of the building itself. So what are we looking at here? We've got a self-storage development that would look something like this. The applicant has put together a mock-up here showing what the buildings would look like here based upon other styles that he's seen. About a $1.5 million investment within the property itself. The layout of the property, we'd have a business storage building, which would be have a little higher finish on it, a little more perks to it, and then some general storage buildings, which would be located to the west, with access coming off of Spiral Boulevard. This is a rough concept plan that we're showing for the property. There will need to be civil engineering plans, architecture plans established, and then the site plan run through our planning commission and council prior to any construction taking place. And from talking to Mr. Smurawa, that's already begun, and he's making plans to get that application into us upon approval of the actions we have before you tonight. The one thing we did talk about last time was the dirt spoil pile, which is located on the property here. From the discussion at the meeting, we had proposed an option in which there could be a partial credit offered for the land in exchange for the applicant moving the dirt spoil piles elsewhere. We've looked at what the cost would be to do that. The cost privately would be about $56,000 to move this pile to an alternative site the city owns, which is essentially right down Spiral Boulevard near the old police shooting range. That would be the place for it. We still use this pile from time to time. It has value to us, so that we ought to be able to hold on to it. In discussing with Public Works options for moving the pile itself, asking if the crews available could do it and what the time frame would be in doing that. We don't have the right equipment to do that, to move this much dirt. The time involved in it would take away from other projects. It's not a priority for them to do it. Taking a look at what other sources there might be to move the dirt off the property. There hasn't been anything else identified. We did some looking as far as other sources. Nothing's been allocated for this site. So what I'm proposing tonight is that the majority of the proceeds that are received for the cash transaction for this property go towards the relocation of the dirt spoil piles to the alternate location. When you take a look at the benefit of the development of this property, the dirt spoil pile on the property is going to inhibit development as we move forward. It needs to be moved for something to happen on it. The sooner that we get that done, the sooner we have taxes coming into the property. Based upon a review of this generation, we'd estimate about $12,000 to $15,000 in city taxes would be earned annually from the development of this property, about $25,000 to $30,000 in total taxes. Essentially, the cost for the relocation of this dirt on this property to an alternate site would be paid back in probably about 3-4 years. If we keep the dirt spoils on the site, it's going to be prohibitive for development for a longer period of time with no payback back on it. So I'm asking the HEDRA board to consider that option tonight as well. On the conceptual site plan review, we went through a lot of this during the last meeting, and with the pictures we showed there, with the understanding that we will need to come back with a site plan application before the Planning Commission and Council. So we do have Chad Smarawa from Creek Rentals here if you have any questions for him, and I could stand for any questions as well. One other note to the report as well, the construction time frame for this project, the development would be 18 months. Typically, we have a 1-year period. In this circumstance, talking with Chad, it would be 18 months. So just wanted to point that clarification out, and I can stand for any questions. Thanks.
Mr. Chairman? John, I know I brought it up last time, and I probably put you in a hard position because a manager of one department trying to talk to the manager of another department to spend their money on moving something. But one of my questions is, one, who okayed the placement of that 1,000 yards of dirt on HEDRA land, or maybe it was industrial park land at that time? How did this dirt get there, and now we need to pay for it to be removed?
Sure. Provide a little bit of background there, Commissioner. During about 2006, we did a grading project east of Enterprise Avenue where we platted out the property. We took off some of the topsoil there. We usually would have about a 2 or 3 foot cap. So we scraped that off so the properties would be more developable. That's where it generated, was from some of the topsoil that was on the site there, and some other fill that Public Works had for other projects at that time period. So it was done as partly with the industrial park improvements in 2006, and then partly some other spoils that happened about that time period.
So, Mr. Chair, did it come from other industrial park land, or it came from outside of the industrial park into the industrial park? And it was, we had the property, and it was stored on our property.
Sure. Commissioner, I think it's a little bit of both. I believe from the grading project that I remember, that we did have some excess soil that was stockpiled at this location, but I can't say for certain if other soil was added to that as well.
So my question to the board is, I'm 100% in favor of the project, so project's gonna go ahead either one. But to me, the 62,000 or 60+ thousand that would be coming to the HEDRA would be something that we would then turn into investments in other types of either grants or downtown investments or something on the, we would use that money. What you're telling me, though, is that money will come into the city in probably 2023 to 26, because by the 18 months, it'll be 2021 before it's on the tax rolls, 2022 when we start collecting it. So it'll be between 2022 and 2020. I'm willing to delay it, but can our council members, or can you ask the council to, well, when that money comes in from the taxes, it will be placed into the HEDRA accounts in 2022 to 26, whenever it comes in. It's just like a TIF, only it's just delayed. I'm comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with just saying, well, I know that the city can't move it now, but we'll pay to move it. It doesn't seem right.
Thank you, Chair. And I agree, Commissioner Tomlin. I'm still hung up on, it's been here for 13 years, and we want to move it. Is it earmarked for another project? Again, we're asking the department head to ask another department head, but I think we should look at, why don't we just sell it? Why do we really want to move it? Do we have need for it? Instead of paying to move it, to say, oh, we got something for sale, get it out of our, we don't have to worry about it, then there's no more moving money here at all. Unless that dirt is planned to go somewhere and it's just valuable, I'm more in the recommendation saying, sell the dirt, get rid of it, and let's move this project along.
Thank you. Yeah, do we know if this is good dirt? Is it topsoil? Is it, what do we know about the dirt?
It's been described to me as mostly clean fill. We had talked about the option that Commissioner Vaughn had discussed about putting it on the market. When you put clean fill on the market, there's certain specifications that are out there that we don't know if this would meet. Our Public Works Department and our Parks Department has future desire to have access to this pile. There's some value of the pile to them, even though there hasn't been a lot of action on taking anything out of the pile in the last decade or so. But that could be an option on it, but the concern that was brought up during the discussion of that is the quality of the fill and whether it would be marketable.
I'm siding with Commissioner Vaughn and Commissioner Toppin. I'd like to sell it. There's always a market for fill. And, you know, as long as there's not chunks of concrete, you know, boulders and so forth, it just seems to me that there would be a market to put it up for sale and have it moved out. It's you said 1,000 yards?
1,000 cubic yards,
So
correct?
that's, a dump truck holds 9?
30.
How much?
I think, yeah.
Well, yeah. You know, 9 yards. I guess enough said. I would like to see it sold rather than, you know, have this thing continue on with it, you know, being paid back over 3-4 years. Everything kind of gets lost in the shuffle. I'd like to see the taxes on the tax roll, you know, as soon as possible.
Got it. Thank you. And you may have answered my question already. Forgive me if I didn't catch it before. The adjacent lot, was that part of any discussion as far as maybe tabling the whole moving the dirt issue and building on one of the other available lots?
Yeah, we do have 2 vacant lots that are located here and here. And the applicant had originally looked at this lot for the location of his facility. I wanted to be able to have this project over to the east end for a couple of different reasons. One, I think it serves as a low-intensity neighbor to the residences nearby. And second, I'd like to have the possibility of a potential combination of these properties if the larger project came in over time. If you put it in the middle there, it would take out that possibility in the future.
John, going back to the dirt. There's an element of giving the dirt away is worth $50-some thousand. So to a certain degree, it seems like somebody's got to convince us that we're better off paying to move it somewhere for them to potentially use, to the extent that it's going to cost them at least $50-some thousand in the future to get the kind of dirt at the volume that they want to get it at this mysterious time that they may or may not need to use it. Otherwise, we're better off just to put a free fill sign on there, you know, take what you will, and we're $50-some thousand ahead if that goes away, right?
Sure. We also want to be cognizant of the time frame of the developer here as well. You know, with offering it for free, that may take a period of time, and that may or may not coincide with the time period for construction and development of the site. So I'm cognizant of that as well.
Sure. Thanks.
Well, I think I can help conclude it, is that I would recommend to this board that the project moves forward with the dirt is recommended to see what the value is to try to sell it. If not, we gotta know where it's going. And then we're gonna push it back on the city council to say, figure out what you're gonna do with the dirt, because it's gotta get out of there within soon, because we have a project that's coming on the HEDRA land. So my motion is to move forward, and then the city council can worry about how we're gonna pay for the dirt to be moved, because this project is, ready to move forward.
Yeah, we're not necessarily deciding as a group that we're gonna foot the bill for moving the dirt tonight.
Right.
That we're just saying we're gonna vote on the project, not necessarily every piece of how it's gonna come together, right?
And offer a bit of clarification on that. You're correct, that the actions we have before you tonight are the recommendation of the land credit for the sale of the property, and then the concept plan review. If you want to provide direction to the city council on what you would desire to do with the land, with the dirt, and from the conversation tonight, it sounds like you'd wish for them to figure out how that would be removed from the property without having the proceeds of the sale be involved in the movement of the dirt. So we can pass that, or any other comments along to the city council. Ultimately, they'll take a look at this on May 6th and then also make a final decision so that we can move forward on some of the documents for transfer.
All right, barring any other questions or comments, I think this is open for motion.
I'll move to approve the project.
A motion to approve the project as presented,
I'll second it.
and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Okay, and just a point of clarification here, I will pass along the conversation, as I'm sure council members Vaughn and Balsanic will at the council meeting, as to the direction of the soil on the property. Thank you.
And I think that was our only,
Yeah,
oh, sorry, please.
Thank you very much for your support, I really appreciate it.
You bet.
Good luck.
I had a quick question, kind of after the fact. Is this all cold storage, or is it gonna be some heated storage combination, or?
So this is planned to be cold storage at this point, but it's, in order to not put too much storage on the market at one time and to kind of upset the existing businesses, you have to do that in town. We're looking to spread it over the 18 months, like I said. Probably that last phase though, which would be coming 22 months from now, would, it's that question, it's a possibility. I don't want to get too far out ahead of it, but I think that's, a market of this size typically would have something of that quality. So it's an option we're keeping probably to make this the last phase.
Your first phase, there's no insulation
Correct.
in the buildings that you put in.
Correct.
Thank you for coming down.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Let's see. Any other business, John? I'm gonna flip back here.
Right, Commissioners, that was the only item of business we had. I can give some updates on some reports, and then I'll turn it over to Rusty here in just a moment. Project updates on the Panache Apple product site. That's the real estate option agreement that we signed in December for the property north of Art Space. We did meet with Panache the other day. There hasn't been a lot of progress in the last couple of months on that site. Still interest that continues on it. There was a request at that meeting to extend the life of the real estate option agreement for a period of time so that we could make some determinations on a price. What we directed Panache is that we need to see more financial information from them to make a determination as to their ability to pay the market price, which is about, I think, $7.35 a square foot, or not. If they're looking for some sort of subsidy in the property, we have to have some sort of justification to consider that. And so we've put that upon her so that she could provide that information. And so it's likely that at the May meeting, when we will have a request to extend that. Other things happening on the site is we do have environmental remediation that needs to take place. And you may recall that we received a grant last year to go through a phase 1 and phase 2 analysis to determine what was in the ground and how much of it and how to clean it up. And we also made application for the cleanup funds, which are about $225,000 altogether. The application we had was not successful. However, I have spoken to Metropolitan Council, who is running the grant program, to determine the likelihood of success upon a resubmittal. They encouraged me to resubmit the property. They thought it had value on it. The next round coming up here is May 1st, so we're making preparations to do that, and cross my fingers that we'll have something be successful this time. But with that project itself, there's a link between having a project under contract, in this case a real estate option agreement, and the increased likelihood of grant application to clean up the property. With grants, it's kind of a chicken and egg scenario. You need to have the property cleaned up in order for somebody to acquire it and to build on it. And but the funding on that sometimes can be challenging. So there is some value in that, and I'm sure we'll have further discussions on that coming up with at the May meeting. And if there's any other questions on Panache, I can answer those at this time.
Yeah, thank you. This is, well, in discussions with them, I mean, are they in, are they out, are they looking for financing? I mean, what is holding them up on, you know, going ahead on everything?
Yeah, Commissioner, it's a good question. There just hasn't been a lot of progress made, I guess is how I would sum it up. They've reached out to some contractors to get some quotes for construction of the shell on it. It's going slower than we had hoped, certainly, on that.
Well, June 1, was that?
June 1,
June
correct.
1. You're submitting an application on May 1.
Mm-hmm.
When do you get the results of that application?
I believe towards the end of summer, I'd say 2 or 3 months upon submittal is when we would know.
Okay. So if we apply again and we don't get it, how do we clean that property up?
It's a very good question. Our first choice would be to find grant funding for it. The Met Council grant seems to be the best fit. There may be other grant sources out there as well. But using other people's money is the preference on this one. I think it would be very challenging for us to put the cost of that cleanup onto the development of it. So I'm trying to avoid doing that and hoping that application for the grant funding would be successful. We've had other circumstances before. We've made an initial application through this program to Met Council, been unsuccessful the first time and been successful on subsequent attempts. So I'm hopeful.
The funding for the cleanup on Art Space, that came from the Met Council?
It did.
Yeah. Did we get that on a first try or second try?
That one we got it on a first try with it. That was a more substantial development from a scoring. It was a low-income housing development and many more housing units on it. And it was a joint application through Met Council and Deed. So it had a couple more things going for it.
Yeah, which raises the question, is Panache something that the Met Council is in favor of, or would they rather see something else there, and then they would go ahead and fund it? Do you have any experience with that?
Yeah, I mean, within the grant applications themselves, the scoring is better with the bigger project that you have, so you get more points for that. Other factors are the level of contamination of the site, location of the site, how it corresponds with other amenities. So there's lots of things going for that site for the getting the grant on it, with the location downtown and the other things going on around it, I think really help it out.
Okay, and we've had no other businesses showing any feelers about that property?
No, not at this point. I mean, with the real estate option agreement, we're in an exclusive situation with this one party. So we certainly could talk, but it's not open at this point. But as far as just general inquiries, in the last few months, no. But there's certainly value on the property, I think. It's encumbered from a standpoint, it's an acre and a half, and there's setbacks for power lines and setbacks from the river, so there's some challenges on it, but it's a great site.
And I have some questions for Mr. Fifield, but I'm gonna wait until he does his presentation,
All right.
I guess,
Sounds good.
as far as that goes.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
And I move along to Great River Landing and Hudson.
John, can we,
Yes.
just real quick on Panache, would it be kosher to strongly encourage them to at least have some semblance of an offer put together before they would request an extension to the agreement?
It's
To me, that seems like, how can you move forward if you can't even, if within 6 months you can't get at least something in writing to the effect of, here's what we think it's worth, or here's what our financial standing would allow us to do, or just here's what we want. We want it for $5 a foot, or we want it for free, or they gotta be able to do something, otherwise what's the point
Yeah, no,
in even considering dragging it out another 6 months?
It's a fair point there. I guess I'd answer in a couple of different ways. Number one, to get more clarity on the project, I think would be very helpful. And it's not asking, I don't think that's asking too much to have that provided before a request is made. I do want to be cognizant that the numbers that we get from them, I want them to be good numbers. When we talked to her yesterday, she's not near that point, and she won't be near that point come the extension request in May. So I'm cognizant of the need for more information, and I'll request that from her. But as far as the specific numbers, I want those to be good so that we can review those. And if that takes a little more time, I'd rather take the time to do that.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Moving on to the Hudson Great River Landing project with the parking ramp, you may have saw in the last couple of days, people are working on that again. From talking to the Confluence Development, they still anticipate that to be done here towards late spring, early summer. So that continues to move on. With the building itself, we've had plans that have been in for building permit for a period of months now. There's been for the shell permit, there's been some internal workings of the interior plans that still are going on. I've met with Confluence and told them very clearly that we really need this thing to start moving along here, that there's getting to be some impatience from a lot of individuals. And with the purchase and development agreement, we do have that deadline for significant completion by December of this year, and the clock keeps ticking away from that. I also told them I think it's very important for them to come forward to meet with us to discuss the project and to answer any questions that HEDRA and the council may have. So I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but one of the things that we'll be discussing during Rusty's presentation is the holding of a joint city council HEDRA meeting during the next regularly scheduled HEDRA meeting coming up on May 9th. And as part of that, I'm inviting Confluence Development in towards the beginning of the meeting to discuss the timeframe of the project and to answer questions as well on that. So we'll have more information at that meeting, and I can stand for any questions related to that project at this point.
I had emailed you about this. I'm gonna be out of town on the 9th. It's a national bowling tournament. You're a bowler, I'm a bowler.
Sure.
Okay. I go to this every year. This year it's in Fargo. And I'm already signed up for it, and I don't wanna miss it. Is there any opportunity that we could do this on a Tuesday night with the council instead of that May 9th Thursday?
I don't know. I
would really like to be
Yeah.
at the meeting.
Nope, I understand that. It's good to have all parties present for it too, and I don't know what schedules would be to look at that. I mean, I might open that up to the commission.
Sorry, Chair. FYI, John, we do have planning commission interviews that night on Tuesday, though. Already
Okay.
scheduled.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
Sorry, Joe. We have planning commission applicant interviews that night on Tuesday already.
Okay.
Yeah, so we've got that, I think, from 6 to about 7:30 that night.
Okay, so, I think are we good on Hudson? Are we good on, in general, that was the last year updates and?
Yeah, that was it. Just the other things within the packet here itself were, we've had a lot of new businesses coming in the downtown area, which is great. Breakaway Arts has been sold, a new bar restaurant's gonna be opening there shortly. Got a new game store going in Lawrence Interiors. One interesting thing here, Planning Commission last night took up a request to rezone 2411 Vermillion Street, that's the old auto stop location, for use for used automobile sales. And that was approved in a split vote by the commission last night. Will go to the council for final action on May 20th. So there's maybe a reuse of that property going on. So that's about all I had under announcements there. Unless there was any other questions from anybody else here.
Just my monthly request, John, any more movement on the property between Walgreens and the Brown House?
Good question on that one. I have not heard anything in the last couple of weeks on that, and I'm due to check in. So thanks for the reminder. I'll do that. But if there's no other questions, I think most of you have had the opportunity to meet our new economic development coordinator, Rusty Fifield. Rusty, we're very fortunate. Rusty comes with us with a tremendous amount of varied experience. He's worked in the private sector, consulting for over 100 cities, worked in the public sector, worked on the CDA board some time ago as well. So, and he was also the author of a couple of plans that we did here. The Heart of Hastings plan from 2002, 2003, he did that, as well as the previous one in 1985. So he's familiar with the city. We're just thrilled to have someone of his level of expertise come in and assist us with the projects, and he's really hit the ground running in the last less than a month that he's been here. So I want to turn the meeting over to him, and he's going to discuss a little bit about economic development, share a PowerPoint presentation, hope to have some more discussion on that. So what we're going to do officially on this is adjourn the regular meeting here, and then we'll open up a work session over in the volunteer room.
Okay. I think we're open to a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
Moved, and a second from Ron. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Meeting is adjourned.